Hi, everyone. Welcome back to ScotWeek 2022. And we are so happy to have our dear friends on from the Scottish Business Network, Lynn McCloghry and Fraser Grier, who are both immigration attorneys. And we also have with us the beautiful Kelsey Deanne, our Vice President. Welcome all, and thank you so much for joining us. And just to give you a little bit of background about Fraser, Fraser was originally from Glasgow, Scotland. He graduated with honors from the University of Glasgow School of Law, then moved to New York to pursue his career, and recently just joined DiRaimondo Schroeder Law Firm. I hope I said that correctly. And we're so honored to have you with us here, Fraser and Kelsey.
Hi, yes, and we also have Lynn McCloghry. Is the pronunciation today. So Lynn is a qualified solicitor in England and Wales, registered legal consultant in New York, and designated global mobility specialist. She is currently partner and co-founder of Eversage Immigration. She's originally from Edinburgh, but Lynn has lived in Dublin, London, Los Angeles, and New York. So very well suited for this position as she's a global traveler. And Lynn has profound experience of all applications made under the points-based system, with a particular interest in visa applications that enhance investments in the UK, and has a passion for working with startups. So thank you so much, Lynn and Fraser. We are so honored to have you back here again. You were with us for 2021 and provided a lot of insights for immigration and attorney and solicitor needs. So thank you and welcome.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us. And I feel like I should talk more about Fraser, but I want you to go check out his profile on LinkedIn. Lynn's on there as well. And make sure that if you have any questions about immigration, that you stay in touch with these two wonderful people and that you call them and use their services. So let's go ahead and launch into our questions for this year. Last year, you were both amazing in taking us through what it takes for a US citizen to live and work in the UK and Scotland and vice versa, and for Brits to live and work here in the United States. So we just would like to expand on that and see if there's been any changes. So Fraser, have there been any updates on the visa applications in the context of Brexit? Or any US trade agreements, anything new on the horizon?
Thanks very much. I know there's a lot of crossover with that question between myself and Lynn, but I think in the context of the US-UK free trade agreement, it's not yet been concluded. So there was 5 rounds of negotiation in 2021, and immigration measures were not featured predominantly in those rounds of negotiation. As an explanation for that, this negotiation process was largely inherited from the Trump administration, where there was absolutely no appetite for expanding employment-based immigration. So the Biden administration, as part of the negotiation process, they're working from being on the back foot and incorporating immigration measures into negotiations. And I think the opportunity here being missed is that pre-COVID-19, the United Kingdom was the 3rd leading source of tourist and business travelers into the United States. And that's behind only Canada and Mexico, who share a border with the United States. So it's the next country that doesn't share a border, or the largest intake from a country that doesn't share a border with the United States. Put that in context of the United Kingdom being one of 29 countries the United States has in its visa waiver program, ESTA, which grants 90 days business or tourism travel visa-free in the United States. So that probably accounts for that the high inflow of business and tourist travelers. The other thing to note is that pre-COVID-19, the United Kingdom was the 5th largest recipient of temporary work visas. It was almost 180,000 issued in 2019. That's H, temporary work visas, L, intercompany transfer, E2 investor. So the UK has this long record of demand, but there's this kind of disconnect between that and current negotiations with the UK-US free trade agreement. But I'll pass it over to Lynn to talk about the UK side as well.
Thanks. And yeah, I agree that there's not necessarily been any changes to UK immigration as a result of the ongoing negotiations and trade agreements. But I certainly think that the immigration landscape in the UK has been shaped by Brexit. And in fact, just last week, we had a new statement of changes to the immigration rules that came in, that were released on the 15th of March, with changes happening through a phased approach for the next couple of months. And those changes are actually coming into play on the 6th of April, some of them. I think that these changes have occurred in the backdrop to Brexit, and some of the changes are minor, some are rebranding of existing visa routes. But there are a few changes I thought would be quite helpful to touch on for some of your listeners, especially for any Americans that are interested in migrating to Scotland and the UK. One particular visa route I think will prove really useful is that we've got this new visa called the High Potential Individual Visa. And that is for applicants who have graduated from a university that's on this global universities list. So, revered universities around the world that make this list. And if you've graduated from this university within 5 years prior to your date of application, you could then enter the UK on this visa. And the wonderful thing about this visa route is that it doesn't require a sponsor. You don't need a job offer, so you're not going to be beholden to a particular employer. You could work for whoever you choose, or you could be self-employed in the UK. And the visa will be valid for 2 years, potentially 3 years if you've got a PhD from one of these universities. And the only downside is it doesn't lead to settlement. So if you're ultimately interested in getting a British passport, it's not the right visa for you, but it could be viewed as a good bridging visa. So you come to the UK, you then find a company that's willing to sponsor you, or you change into a different visa route. So I think that could actually be a really valuable new visa route for a lot of Americans who are looking to come to the UK. And then we've also got a new scale-up visa. That's for people who are looking to be sponsored by a company that's in that scale-up sector. And we're still waiting on quite a lot of details on that. And then the third visa route that's been launched is called Global Business Mobility Route. And within that, we've got 5 new visa routes that are happening, and some are rebranding, but then there's a couple of new ones there. The really sad departure, in my opinion, is that we will no longer have the sole representative visa, which was really useful for American companies that were looking to send somebody to the UK as their sole representative to launch in the UK. That unfortunately is being dropped as of the 11th of April, and it's going to be replaced by a UK expansion visa, which is not nearly as appealing because it doesn't lead to settlement, and it's going to be for 2 years. So they've given us some good stuff, but they've also taken away. So all in all, we're probably evens.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, thank you for those updates. It's really fascinating. And I don't think I've spoken to you guys recently, but I'm particularly interested to see how it plays out with the new the university extension visa. I got accepted to university. Thank you. Yes. I will actually be moving to Scotland in August. I got accepted to the University of Edinburgh for their PhD program. So I'm very, very excited. I haven't started even looking at the visa application yet. But,
we can help, don't worry.
Fantastic. But leading on, not just the student visas, but just in general, especially, I mean, a lot of our audience members, are businesses. So what are some of the common hiccups in this application process and some red flags that need to be brought to attention?
Well, I'll go first. There's plenty to go on with the US system. So I think the US system, by comparison, the UK system is still archaic and paper-based. So the process of an application, where say, for example, you have an E2 investor visa, which is could be anything up to 700 pages of meticulous accounting of your business and viability to be entitled to the visa. If there's a mistake on it in a paper-based filing, it's extremely hard to rectify. It slows down correspondence. Oftentimes, it's processes like interfiling, which is trying to switch up a category designation for an adjustment of status or a green card. These are difficult to do in a paper-based correspondence system. So that's the first thing in terms of the preparation end. A lot of people will try and self-petition, especially family-based. They'll say, no, I'm not going to get a lawyer, I'm going to send this in myself. And they'll send in an I-130, I-485 marriage-based adjustment status petition, and there'll be mistakes on it. They'll come to interview and there might be a fatal error, something that's disclosed when it wasn't the case, or something that should have been. So those things combined can make it quite difficult in terms of self-filing, access to, obviously it limits access to the immigration system in the US for those who can't afford a lawyer as well. So it's, it puts restrictions on in there. The other thing to note, a lot of people make basic mistakes with is intent and purpose and travel. So especially with, like mentioned Esther earlier on, or B2s, which is a tourism business-based visa, a lot of people think that they are permitted to work in the United States for an overseas employer while their feet are in the US, which is not permissible. So the other thing to be very aware of is intent. If CBP, US Customs and Border Patrol, take an issue and put on record that you were seeking to enter with a duplicitous intent, then that can cause issues down the road. It'll have to be a FOIA request and a request to have your record corrected or have that struck off. So those are two kind of front end things which can be really problematic without counsel. And like I said, because it's quite an archaic system, it means that counsel is kind of necessary as opposed to a more democratized system online.
Thank you for that, Lynn. Yeah.
Yeah, as Fraser said, I always feel bad when I'm talking with Fraser, because our immigration system is entirely rules-based, it's objective, so you definitely know where you stand, and it provides an applicant a great deal of certainty, because we'll be able to judge the merits of an application based on whether or not you meet the immigration rules. That being said, the immigration rules are complex, and they can also be quite difficult to track down. And I think that the government on purpose on gov.uk, they quite often make a visa route seem very appealing and quite simplistic. So if you were just to go on the website, you think, oh, brilliant, I just need to find a company willing to sponsor me, easy peasy. It doesn't ever go into the minutiae, and you wouldn't be aware, for example, you need a TB certificate or police registration or an ECTAS confirmation. So I think my message is always make sure you find the source. So always go to the immigration rules and the company guidance to actually determine what the eligibility criteria is for a visa. And don't be fooled by third-party websites that perhaps simplify these things. And I think what goes hand in hand with the complexity of the immigration rules is the fact that even though we are all now electronic, so we don't submit any paper documents, and you don't even surrender your passport typically, or if you do, it's only for a matter of weeks, is that it's quite easy to miss documents. So there are quite a few rules about, the date of a bank statement has to be dated within 28 days of the application, or if you're going for a global talent visa, your endorsement has to be dated within 3 months of the visa. So there are quite a lot of different rules that you just have to be aware of. And then my final point is just about timing. So the really fortunate thing about US applications is that standard processing for a visa to come to the UK is usually 3 weeks. But if you want to pay a wee bit of extra money, you can always expedite that application, and you can even get a decision in the States within 24 to 48 hours. So it's absolutely brilliant. My only caveat to that would be is that if you are going to work for a company in the UK that might not have a sponsor license yet, that can usually take another 3 months to get a sponsor license. And nationality applications tend to be much longer. They can take up to 6 months. So just beware of your timing.
Well, that's some great information, and I think that's very useful. And I was happy to hear that the turnaround time for applications is really not that long compared to a lot of things that we're having to go through right now or see with the pandemic in place. So that's encouraging. So Fraser, since being admitted as an attorney in New York State, you have worked and practiced corporate law. Internationally, specializing in inbound small to medium-sized enterprises here in the US. You've practiced employment, tax, immigration, and data protection law. You've done quite a lot in your time in New York. So I just wanted to point that out to our viewers. And also just ask you, we don't want to talk too much about politics, but in the midst of the Russian invasion to the Ukraine, I just wanted to get your insight. Do you foresee this impacting the US-UK immigration or any other tangible topics with the US-UK dynamic? Is there anything you've seen so far, anything you see might be coming down the road?
In terms of I think one of the more pressing issues at the moment with the Russian invasion of Ukraine is the refugee outflux. I believe 2 million Ukrainians have now left Ukraine and sought refuge in neighboring Poland and other Eastern European bloc countries. One of the things that Western governments, like Europe and the United States, have been unanimous in gesturing, but not unanimous in the effort put in, or the extension, is welcoming Ukrainian refugees with open arms. So I think it's quite telling that public polling with intake of Ukrainian refugees in both the United States and the UK is comparatively higher. Or I can speak for the UK, with the US, sorry, is comparatively higher than the influx of Syrian refugees in 2015, or refugees from South America. So I think there's a latent kind of nativism that I think that also underpinned Brexit and the election of Trump in 2016, which is kind of telling there in terms of the difference between the open arm intake of Ukrainian refugees and not as much with Syrian refugee crisis or refugees from the Arab Spring. So I think it'll be interesting moving forward from that in terms of refugee admissions policy, where looking back on it, measures were extended, but kind of if people start to acknowledge what the differentiator was there, then hopefully there's a more productive and progressive conversation moving forward.
Amazing. So Lynn, from your side of the pond, as it were, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so we've actually seen quite a few changes. I would say that the government was not as proactive and quick at addressing a policy response that has been completely slated in the media in the UK, and rightly so, to be honest. But we are seeing a few things happening now, which is good. So in spite of everything I said about visas being really, really fast, the one thing that has changed as a result of the invasion is that the Home Office, who decide a visa application in the UK, is allotting a lot of resources to helping Ukrainian visa applications. So it's actually suspended the super priority and priority visa processing for every application made outside the UK. So what that means is you're not going to get a decision within 24 hours right now, and it's probably more likely to be 3 weeks. I suspect that suspension will continue for probably another month or so, and then once we've got through the initial rush of visa applications for Ukrainians, then resources will be directed back to where they were before. But that's just important to flag at the moment. Don't be expecting a decision the next day if you're applying from America. Bear that in mind. We have not seen any concessions at all for Russians, and nor do we expect any concessions, which is actually difficult at the moment. We've had a lot of inquiries from Russian citizens who have fled Russia out of response and feel like they cannot return to Russia. But unfortunately, the position, if you're applying for a UK visa, is you can only apply from your country of nationality or your country of residence. So we've had to advise some Russians that they actually have to go back to Russia to then submit their visa. And these visa applications in Russia are taking at least 6 weeks at the moment because there's a whole load of scrutiny around that now. So that's been a wee bit unfortunate. And then for Ukrainians, though, there are some good measures in place. So they've relaxed the rules that you can now switch. If you're already in the UK, you can switch into long-term visa routes. There's also the Ukrainian family scheme. So a British citizen with Ukrainian relatives can sponsor Ukrainians to come to the UK. And then we've also got the Homes for Ukraine scheme, whereby people are giving up their homes, a room in their house to host Ukrainian family. And then there's also various concessions on, documentation requirements and whether or not you need to submit your biometrics. You can now do that in the UK. So there are quite a few measures in place, and it would be really good to see the numbers rise for the number of Ukrainians that are being admitted to the UK.
Wow, thank you both for that update. It's there's many of us that are just glued to the news and whatever platform that is, just to get more of a beat on what's going on over there. And so hopefully things improve. And thank you very much for that insight. So now this has been a little bit of a fun question. So hypothetically, if you were the head of state or, oh, sorry, my Wi-Fi kind of lagged. Okay. You were the head of state for immigration or trade and investment. What would you do, if anything, if you had the power to improve the US-UK bilateral immigration, if anything? Lynn, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. So I love this question, and I welcome any opportunity to voice this one. The first thing I would say, though, is that, as I've hopefully relayed, is, for US citizens coming to the UK, you're a non-visa national, so you can just arrive at the border. You don't need to have a visa, and you can stay for up to 6 months, provided you're doing permitted activities. So obviously, if you're going to be working in the UK, you need a work visa, etc. But you don't need to meet an English language requirement. You don't need to have a TB certificate. You don't need to register with the police. So there are lots of the immigration rules that are not necessarily applicable because of your nationality. So generally speaking, provided you meet the rules of whatever visa route, it's quite a straightforward application. But the one area that I think we're definitely lacking, and especially because I know so many people want to come to Scotland, is some kind of retirement visa or a visa of independent means. So I think what is a real shame is that if you were wanting to retire in Scotland, there isn't really any visa route available for you, unless, for example, you were married to a Brit or you had some nationality claim. And it's a real shame, because I think the retirement community brings so much to the country in terms of not just financial well-being and strength, it's also about cultural diversity and everything that follows with that. And I have so many people who are interested in moving to Scotland because they might have relatives but they're not able to come. And so first chance I get, I would definitely introduce a retirement visa.
That's brilliant. I love that. And that's a really good point, because there's so many places to go to in Scotland, like just bouncing around and staying in different Airbnbs and castles. Yeah. and biking. And I know my grandparents, after they retired, they spent a lot of time in the UK doing that. So that's a really good point. Fraser, what would you do to improve the US-UK bilateral immigration?
Yeah, so I would add the United Kingdom to the United States E3 visa scheme, or in part something like NAFTA that the United States has between Canada and Mexico. So the standard the standard work visa, the H-1B in the US, is via lottery. It is not a good way to apportion talent or intake of talent, because you can have someone with a doctorate who's entering a lottery, and it's in a specific field. So it's not a good way of working with a specific country in terms of influx of talent, or reciprocal influx of talent. So the E3 scheme was brought in for Australians in 2005 as part of a bespoke free trade agreement between the US and the United States. Similarly, the TN visa scheme was brought in between Canada and the United States, and Mexico and the United States under NAFTA. So they're both the product of a negotiated free trade agreement. And what they do is, the good thing about the E3 and the TN is they bypass the lottery. There's no need to enter a lottery to get one, and they can be renewed indefinitely. Whereas an H-1B has 6-year cap, which cannot be extended unless you file for a green card and you're waiting in the visa backlog, or you leave and come back after a period of time for another 6-year, apply for another 6-year period. So it's there is methods of doing it. It's tried and tested between Australia and in Canada and Mexico. So I would love to see that incorporated into the eventual UK-US free trade agreement. But like I said at the very start, it doesn't seem to be the appetite for that at the moment.
Fascinating. It's wonderful to hear your thoughts, both of you, on all of these different issues. It's great to catch up here with you again. And I just want to say again, thank you very, very much, Lynn McCloghry and Fraser Grier. And if you need their services or like to reach out or get in touch with them, they're both on LinkedIn. Fraser, is there any other way that people can find you? Would you like them to go through LinkedIn? What can you share?
LinkedIn's best. So yeah, my second name, Grier, Fraser Grier. Feel free. I'm the only one on LinkedIn, so I'm not hard to find.
Okay, and Lynn, you as well?
Yeah, if you can't search for my surname, just go to eversageimmigration.com.
We're very honored to have you both on again today for these updates. We will keep in touch with you, and great partners with the Scottish Business Network. And so we're all affiliated with the Scottish Business Network. There are our partners at ScotWeek, and we just want to point out that if you want to get involved with SBN, you can find them also on LinkedIn and SBN, I believe, .com. I should have looked at that. And thank you all for joining us. And Fraser and Lynn, goodbye for now, and we'll check back in with you in a couple of months. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Kelsey, thank you as well.
You all.